I'd like to now invite the next panel to talk about financial crime. We've been involved in this now for several years. Like everything else, fighting financial crime is a data issue. And we've got Brian and team that are going to talk through this.
My name is Brian McConnell. I am president and founder of Wellington Consulting Group and been an EDM council member for, I don't know, 8, 9 years, something like that. Participated in a number of different special interest groups, currently co-leading the data ROI special interest groups. If you want to talk about that one, I can have a chat with you afterwards. And we're DCAM certified as well and have been for a while in that area. So great organization to follow up on these guys, and one that just makes a ton of sense to join, I think. So I'm going to do a little intro to our panel here. So first of all, I want to meet Gabe Meleg. Gabe is the Director of Financial Crimes Technology at BMO. And for the last few years, Gabe has been leading a fraud modernization program at Bank of Montreal. Malcolm Clarke, second from the end there, is a principal at Wellington Consulting Group and was most recently working alongside Gabe on the fraud modernization project at BMO. And prior to fraud modernization, Malcolm, among other things, helped develop and execute business and data strategy for the AML group, also at BMO. Palash, who's down at the end there, is VP, Head of Data Analytics and Fraud, and also CDO at Interact. And as you just heard, they are now DCAM Excellence certified. I haven't got the name quite right, but congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thanks. First Canadian organization.
Yeah, first Canadian organization to do that. Palash, in the function as CDO, he leads the team responsible for data analytics, data management, data fraud science, and fraud operations. Prior to that, Palash worked in data analytics and data management at CIBC. In the middle is Stuart Davis. Stuart has had a long and distinguished career fighting crime, financial crime. Was most recently EVP Internal Data Protection, and just prior to that, EVP of Global Head of Financial Crimes Risk Management at Scotiabank. He's recently retired, at least for the moment. I think he's going to take the summer off, play a bit of golf, and then get back to work in the fall. Before that, Stuart was a Global Chief Anti-Money Laundering Officer at BMO, and before that, he was the CAMLO at USAA. Stuart is a much sought-after speaker on the topic of financial crimes and in particular human trafficking. He's spoken at the Vatican and at the United Nations and way too many conferences to mention on these topics. And he was also received the ACAMS Person of the Year Award in 2019. So please join me in welcoming our distinguished panel. Thank you. So, you'd have to be hiding under a rock these days if you haven't noticed that financial crimes are getting a lot of press on the front pages of I guess we can't say the front pages anymore. I guess above the fold. Yeah. We used to say front page and above the fold, but now it's landing page of the media these days. Canada is actually a sought after environment by these bad actors, primarily because we follow the rule of law. So the rule of law also applies to them, which means their privacy is protected, and they have figured out how to make the most of those privacy protections and protect themselves from the ability of us to go after these bad actors. It's not to say we're not successful in many cases, but that's one of the reasons why Canada is a target of financial crimes. So to kick things off, I just wanted to kind of open up the panel, and I'll start off with you, Stuart. What are your general thoughts on AML and fraud? I mean, we've all seen the landing pages. What are your general thoughts on the status of AML, fraud, and cyber crimes, particularly in Canada right now?
Well, thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be here as well. In my mind, and just sort of looking at the current play of things across the industry, especially with a focus here in Canada, still a lot of work to be done. And, one of the key things to that is data and getting the data right, because when you look at money movement through the bank, that's really what AML needs to focus on. It's not just who has an account, but how is money moving through the bank? All the payment systems, all the legacy payment methods, such as checks, debits, and credits as well. And getting that data right is still, believe it or not, a very big challenge for organizations. And I would be encouraged to see the EDM Council pick up some data standardizations on what's needed in the AML and KYC space, frankly. The current state, though, is that the sophistication of the criminal networks and the leverage that they are now gaining through the use and exploiting of AI, as well as organized criminal infrastructures, not just, one off here, but entire corporate-like structures driving cybercrime, driving fraud, and laundering money mainly through stolen identities and numbered accounts and shell corporations and things of that sort. The problem's not going away. It's estimated now 3% of global GDP is associated with financial crime of some sort. And it's often not just, drugs and terrorism, but it's sophisticated money laundering. Human trafficking, I think, is the third or the fourth largest aspect of that, which includes labor trafficking as well as sex trafficking. So what I've seen in the industry is that it's not just what we're required to do as banking institutions, but what is the government putting their priority on to fight? Because a financial institution can close an account, maybe stop the fraud. They can block an IP address, maybe stop the hacker. But the problem just continues and it goes to the next bank unless law enforcement and the government are willing and able to take action. And that's, I think, been the biggest challenge, is that community effect of everybody working on the same priorities. We found a common priority of working and focusing on human trafficking. But that same common priority doesn't exist, unfortunately, on some of the more sophisticated money laundering schemes, especially when they cut across international boundaries. So countries such as Canada are left working closely with countries like the UK or the US, where they're willing to take a much more aggressive stand against some of the more sophisticated criminal activities.
Thank you. Anyone else want to just kind of chime in on that state of the nation on AML and fraud? I mean, one of the stats that I know Stuart mentioned, the 3% of GDP might be a bit of an old stat, but you may have a new one. But I also know that conviction rates on financial crime are less than 1%.
Yeah.
So the dichotomy between those two is just alarming.
Yeah, I think Stuart's covered it all, right? I've got a bunch of stats, so I've got my phone on here because some of these are alarming. Right? When you look at suspected digital fraud attempts in Canada, it's gone up 40% year on year. Pre-COVID to today has gone up by over 200%, alarming rates, right? So, and by show of hands, anybody here hasn't got a call that said likely fraud? I'll be surprised. Just as I was walking in, and I think I was talking to Matt, got a fraud call, right? Likely fraud. So it's become so pervasive, so much a part of today's life that we, Stuart's right. We need to fight financial crime, money laundering, fraud as a whole. It's not going to give anybody a competitive edge.
And I know, most of you or a lot of you are with financial institutions, but financial crimes also spreads beyond the banks. The banks are kind of front and center to helping this, but I mean, you guys are all victims of this financial crime, both corporately and individually, right? Because these kinds of challenges filter down to you as companies and also you as individuals. So, AI, which is what we're here to talk about today. Again, we've all seen, those videos of, people and voices and things up there where they're imitating people that we know and they're saying things that we're going, that doesn't make sense, right? We know that's AI. We know that that's bad actors, sometimes in jest, sometimes in fun. But AI is really stepping up the game of the bad actors out there. And of course, they don't have the rules and regulations, privacy, et cetera, that we have to follow as individuals or as corporations. So how are the bad actors making use of AI? And I'll kick that question to Palash first to see what your thoughts are.
Sure. Just with any technology, you've got goods and bads with, AI as well. And the latest kid in the block, generative AI, right? Everybody's talking about it, the shiny toy. I'll tell about Interact and almost all the financial institutions. We have deployed AI machine learning models to fight financial crime. So that's the good part of it. But you have the bad actors outsmarting you every day. So Stuart pointed out it's an organized crime. It is an organized crime. It is probably people like you and me walking out for a 9-to-5 job, right, in corporate headquarters because their job is just spreading financial crime. It's no longer someone in the basement wearing a hoodie and typing in something, right? So the dynamics have changed, and there's so much available to the fraudsters in terms of technology, specifically AI and generative AI. One of the main things is around creation of synthetic IDs using AI, and we all know what that leads to. A lot of mule accounts that you can create or fake accounts that you can create. And this is the first gateway to money laundering eventually, right? So that's huge. Deep fakes are very common. So we have heard many instances. I think there was a Canadian example a few months back, if I remember, probably in Ottawa, where an elderly retired couple, they were scammed, a crypto scam, close to 200K. CTV actually carried their story, and guess what? Fraudsters took that, deep-faked, and created a promo video out of it, saying, "Hey, here's the path to your financial independence, right? You have to invest in this crypto and whatnot." So we've seen many instances of those. Voice cloning is another one. Imposters, they will basically pretend to be someone else. Scams come in multiple flavors today. You've got romance scam, you've got grandparent scam, if you've heard about those as well. Saying, "Hey, your grandkid needs money," right? And so a lot of these it's not people typing in on the other side. It is basically with the advent of technology, and especially with generative AI, your content creation efficiency has gone so high. If you think about it, phishing, vishing, smishing activities are all content driven. Back in the day, 6 months back, or even 2 years back, you used to see typos in these messages that you get. You don't get typos anymore. Very sophisticated phishing campaigns, at least in Interact, very difficult to even gauge that these are phishing campaigns because they're all Gen AI driven. Right, so the contents are becoming more sophisticated, and you know what? As I said, the actors are using all these technologies that they have. Social engineering, which I mentioned. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything that I wanted to cover there. I think these are all the points that I wanted to cover. But organized crime, there is a good Netflix documentary or serial based out of India called Jamtara. If you have ever seen it, or if you have not, you should check it out. It gives you a good sense of what organized fraud is like, or cybercrime is like, right? So I'll probably stop at that, and if anybody else would like to.
Anybody else want to chime in on that topic?
If I could just add, when he referred to what's going on in India, there's a big problem of human trafficking being forced into these call centers and to facilitate the crime, right? To collect the information, because AI needs information. So what are they doing? I would be very honest here. They're calling you, pretending to be something else to profile you and collect that information for the system. How many times have you gotten a call for some service you don't need, like cleaning your air ducts or fundraisers for a charity, but you can tell it's a foreign call center. It's actually a profiling service run by the fraudsters. And that's the scary thing, because these people think they're maybe doing good, or they become labor trafficked in many places across the world. Their passports taken, they're held captive, they're forced to dial for dollars, and they're collecting information that the fraudsters then leverage to come back after you later on. And so that's, AI needs data, and that's how they're getting it, plus all the breaches, plus all the social media that's available. I mean, the amount of data that's available, any one of us in this room, if it's all pulled together correctly, can pretty much become you in an instant. It's quite scary.
So what do we do? Like, what thank you very much for coming. Drinks from the patio. Yeah.
Nobody do.
Okay. So what do we do? I mean, Gabe, you want to?
Sure. So I think, well, the first thing is don't panic. But no, I mean, from my fellow panelists, we heard a little bit about financial crime being on the rise, of course. We heard that conviction rates are very low here in Canada. And we heard that AI is definitely being, leveraged by bad actors. And firstly, I'll say that is an absolutely true statement. Being in financial crimes, we know that bad actors, whether they're trying to steal our money, steal our data, make us look bad, put us on the landing page of the news sites, they are all leveraging this technology in a multitude of different ways. To your question on what do we do, we have to embrace the same technology. This is, fight fire with fire. This is the only way that we can do it. And I can tell you that's exactly how we're operating in this new ecosystem. For me, and probably the part I want to stress to you, that when it comes to deploying AI technologies within your organizations, there is quite a bit of upfront work preparation-wise. And as data management folks, I'm sure you can appreciate that. Of course, there's a huge role for all of you in preparing the organization, both from a structure perspective and right down to the technical details, such as understanding the data you have. You all work for big organizations. I'm sure there's just an immense amount of data that is available. Identifying the folks that understand this data and have the ability to bring this data together, break down barriers between different parts of the organization, things like that, is extremely important. Another thing that falls into the preparation category is ensuring that you have well-defined, clear, repeatable processes in how you're going to govern, implement, then govern AI technology. That all has to be very quick and repeatable, so that you can once you have initial use cases, you can quickly pivot. The threats that we talked about here, these are changing by the hour. There's nothing static here. So this isn't sort of a set it and forget it, and now you've got an awesome new capability that you can leverage for months and years. It doesn't work like that. So all of it is based on the feedback loop, deploying this technology, learning from it, and quickly being able to iterate to improve. I know you folks are very data centric, but there's a huge role here for solution architects, IT folks that are able to create integration patterns and solutions that are flexible. One of the hallmarks of AI technology, of course, is being able to quickly pivot and bring in new data. Well, if the feedback loop is working really efficiently and you're able to react to the changing bad actor ecosystem and all of the different threats, you can't have integrations be the holdup from a technology perspective. So also very important. And then lastly, I will say this is sort of an emerging field that I've had a few discussions on, but when we talk about governance, even things like making sure that you have a process around a repeatable process around assessing any biases in the models. We're getting some questions from internal groups as well as, regulators are starting to ask questions around. That's great. You have AI technology deployed, and you're mitigating some of these new emerging threats. But how are you protecting yourself as an organization against biases in these models? So, just a heads up that this is something that is relatively new, but it's definitely emerging as you think on how to set this up in your organizations. And then lastly, it's important to really recognize that there are good and bad use cases for AI. So the whole, again, process and governance around generating use cases, it also needs to be a mature practice in your organizations. It's just important. Otherwise, you're really not, setting yourself up for success. In terms of use cases, I tend to think about them in two categories. Proactive, and that's around improving capabilities in detecting and monitoring threats, whether it's cyber or fraud. And then, of course, reactive. There can be, huge efficiencies and benefits in resolving incidents quicker, and even leveraging AI technology to improve the efficiency of the operational groups, which then in turn allows them to monitor more things and be able to, hopefully stop more threats and more bad actors. So I'll pause it.
Okay. Palash?
Yeah, can I add a couple of points there? So agree with all the things Gabe said. See, the other important point is being vigilant and aware, right? So everybody needs to be well educated on fraud. My family calls me paranoid because I've had examples where my daughter calls up from the basement. So just for context, my 12-year-old, she got a cell phone a few months back. I didn't store it. I didn't recognize the number. She was calling from the basement. I was upstairs 4 times. And then she yells out, "Papa." I'm like, "Yes, it's me, not a fraudster." He knows I don't pick up phone calls if it's from a unknown number, right? But I am paranoid. And I think it is important that we are all vigilant and aware. I think education, not only at the organization level, but even at schools, like get it out there to the kids, right? They are the citizens, right, of the future. So you have to get it out at the grassroots level. And the other important thing for organizations is probably fraud intelligence sharing at the consortium level. I think that is super critical. This is not a competition anymore. It's a game of co-petition, I would say. You have to really share intelligence. Because if it's happening to Bank A today, it's happening to FIB tomorrow.
Yep.
Right. And they move fast, right? The fraudsters move fast. So I think it's very important that we create that central entity or an intelligence sharing platform.
Yeah. And in Canada, that's a difficult challenge because there's regulations in place that prevent us from doing that. US is a little more open, and I know Stuart wants to speak on that.
It's a real quick point. In this new Ways and Means bill, after 8 years of lobbying, we actually have provisions for AML information sharing that are now pending, subject to the approval of the budget. So once that's done, I think it'll be a bright light in our regulatory environment here in Canada.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. No, it's been a real challenge here in Canada, especially. Final question. So our audience are mostly data practitioners. What specifically do you think they can do to help fight financial crimes and keep the bad actors at bay. And I'll kick that over to Malcolm and see what he's got to say.
Thank you. I've been quiet so far. How many people have used AI? Okay. How many organizations have used it organizationally versus individually? I've used it in both cases. So AI is here. AI is here to stay. We've just heard it's going fast, and we need to get prepared. We need to help organizations get prepared to go quickly as well. So at the very beginning, John presented that we have this EDM council. We have this amazing structure on data management. Data management is the key. The maturity model that we've shown here that is available to you through the EDM Council gives you a roadmap, a structure, and it is important that, in my opinion, as data practitioners, that we employ this throughout organizations, not necessarily DCAM, but I would highly recommend it. It's ready to go, and having a positive feedback loop through AI is going to allow us to go that much quicker. AI is a program. It is not a project. It's not a flash in the pan. You need a strong sponsor. You need funding. You need an ongoing the ability to sustain this ongoing and go quickly. I personally believe that if we were to look at the EDM, DCAM in particular, there are a couple of areas that are going to be heavily impacted by AI. One is governance, of course. And in the data management itself, it's business and technology architecture. I was listening to Jensen Huang, who's the founder and the CEO of NVIDIA yesterday, and he is talking about processing all the data on the internet and running it through AI. So that's visionary, that's incredible. But it must be possible, right? For somebody to be thinking that that's the case. Every one of our organizations sits on a gold mine of data. So yes, the bad actors have access to lots of good stuff. They can profile you, but I would suggest that we have much more information available to us. So there are patterns in that data that we can discover. AI it brings to us the ability to process huge amounts of data in a short period of time. The focus is going to, in my opinion, go to the other side of the equation, which is the output management. We need to look and accept that we'll have bias. We're going to have gaps in our data and be able to react quickly to that, and then feed it back in and move forward. So it becomes much more about thinking of the outcome than preparing the data for the input. Yes, that's still required, but I think it's going to go quicker, and it's going to be much more important. So
great. We've got 2 minutes and 5 seconds left.
Any questions?
So let's throw it to the audience. There's one way back there, John.
Yeah. So so ESG and financial crime have a crossover under governance, right? And so I'm a hacker, or if I'm a bad agent, I'm not gonna go after a bank. It's a lot of work. But I'll probably go after, a softer target, right? Like in the TD case, it might have been Teller, and SolarWinds, it was in somebody's supply chain, right? So I'm wondering, like, from a financial institution perspective, to what degree are you cascading down certifications on SOC 2 and ISO into your supply chain? And to what degree are you interrogating the supply chain as a vulnerability to yourselves on upstream basis?
Who wants to take at that first?
So within Canada, under the for financial institutions, OSFI rules, B10, B13 are starting to really, especially 13, starting to push down aspects of cyber risk oversight into our supply chain systems. I'd say there's a long way to go, though, and I think we're really just slowly climbing up that curve. But the recognition is there of the vulnerabilities, and it's really increasingly important on not just having good data on your customers, but good data on all your vendors and partners and what information they have on you. So as much diligence is needed on that as our own data, frankly, in my opinion.
If I can add to the panel, and it's to your question, Brian, what do we do? And don't dig a hole and put all your money in the hole in the backyard. The council has been working for the past couple of years on leveraging knowledge graph and semantic modeling to combat financial fraud and also human trafficking, because these are network problems. And this is where the power of data comes into play. And I'm sure you're all experiencing that now. The network, what it does is it discovers relationships that often uncover the bad actors. There's a classic use case where they find that the bad actor was in a laundromat in Russia somewhere, and they tracked it all the way through South America up through, into the overseas. This is also being now used for human trafficking. I personally had a meeting just this week with a woman from the UN who's doing human trafficking studies, and this is one of the things they're starting to leverage. Also, from a supply chain perspective, we had conversations with the Department of Defense in the United States. Think about any military supply chain. It could be that 10-cent chip that prevents a fighter jet from flying, right? So what organizations are doing, leveraging data, is they're building digital twins of these supply chains and stressing those models to see where the vulnerabilities are. We're working with the telco industry, fascinating, telco and entity identification. So when you get that call and it says fraudulent, right, they're actually starting to be able to identify this. One of the challenges is, at least I know from the US perspective, there's laws that prevent that type of robocalling, but because of treaties with overseas countries, we can't block the calls coming from overseas.
We can't block the US calls.
Oh, we will get you later.
Okay.
But again, this is where we as a community have to really stand up and leverage the power of information, the power of AI to address these issues. I think this is an incredibly important issue for us. And I thank the panel for your insights, and all of you, if you're not doing this in your organizations, be aware of this, because I think the power of information is what's going to help fight these issues. So I want to thank the panel for
Thank you.
Okay.
So, one final word. But if I were you, one of the things I would go away and do is I would learn about AI. As individuals and as practitioners, go and get yourselves on some courses, because that's going to start to educate you on how you can help your organization take the next steps. Because this is here, as we know, and it's going to happen. And one of the things we want to prevent is these fraudulent crimes. So,
Agreed.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.